Okay, so we're continuing on with political parties, and this is part 2 of chapter 5 on political parties. And so the learning objectives in this chapter are that we're going to be talking about, covered the ideologies in the last part. Now I'm going to be bringing them together in what it's like for the Democratic and Republican parties in Texas. So we're focusing on Texas. Now I have to tell you though is that, when I present the ideologies, it's like this wide spectrum of nobody's either like so far to the right or so far to the left. A lot of people fall kind of in the middle. So I'm going to be telling you how Texas is kind of set up into different or two different factions within each of the parties. So we'll be talking about it within that regard. We're going to be talking about the racial and the ethnic votes, and I'll show you some graphics on that. We're going to be talking about the party machines and conventions in Texas, and that's basically how's the party run. What organizations or institutions are set up in order for the party to hold the elections, get the delegate count, do the state conventions, do the party platforms. We'll talk about that. And the last one, the realignment and de-alignment, in the last graphic that I showed you in the part 1, I showed you how the party affiliation has been declining. So we're going to be talking about maybe some of the reasons why it has been declining then. Okay, look at this map right here. And so this is based on the last presidential election, the one in 2015, I'm sorry, 16. And so if you look at Texas, you can see that Texas is by far very Republican because you see a lot of red. So usually the conservative or the Republicans are depicted in red, whereas the Democrats are depicted in blue. Now, what you should also notice is that a lot of the urban areas, the large urban centers are blue. So there's been this divide in how Texas has been voting. You find that in the large urban centers that they do support the Democratic Party on a large scale. I mean, a very large scale, as does South Texas. But the rest of the state, which is a very rural area, there are a lot of small towns, a lot of farming communities, that type of thing, tend to vote Republican, and that's what this map is reflecting. So if you're saying, well, is it more Republican or is it more Democrat? Again, it's kind of like half and half, but it's really who comes out to vote. Who has a better party machinery to be able to get people out to vote. Okay, so in the Democratic Party, I gave you some characteristics of what liberals believe in. So let's bring out this type of liberal ideology and apply it to the Democratic Party, specifically here in Texas. So here in Texas, the Democratic Party is divided into two factions. One is the more conservative wing and more liberal wing. So the conservative wing has gone by different names. It's gone by the Blue Dog Democrats, and now they're being called the establishment Democrats. And so the conservative wing of the Democratic Party tends to be more successful in the state of Texas, and most governors that have been elected as Democrats have come from this conservative wing or this more establishment wing. And so there is more success in that, as are most legislators as well. Okay, so who belongs to this establishment wing or the blue dog wing? Well, if not everybody that has money belongs to the Republican Party. We have a big presence of oil, gas, sulfur industries. The petroleum industry is huge in the state of Texas, here in Corpus Christi, as well as Houston, as well as Midland, Odessa, as well as the Permian Basin. So it's just kind of all over Texas. So it's big. So they're not all Republicans. A lot of them are Democrats, but they tend to be more of this conservative wing, the more establishment wing of the Democratic Party, as is agribusiness. And agribusiness tends to be fertilizers and pesticides, the producers of those. That if they are Democrats, they tend to be more of the conservative wing or establishment wing of the Democratic Party. As are publishers of the daily newspapers, tend to be more of that conservative wing. And so, each newspaper has like their own slant. Some of them will be a little bit more progressive than others. The Austin American Statesman is probably like the most progressive newspaper in the state of Texas, with the other ones falling somewhere within a range of what's more conservative or not. Okay, so let's talk about liberals, the liberal wing of the Democratic Party. And so the liberal wing has been known as the Yellow Dog Democrats. Right now, they're being called progressives. So the progressives tend to really believe the the most um, left hand, yeah, the most left part of the spectrum of the ideologies. They tend to support everybody that's going to be running on the National Party ticket and its presidents. So they're calling them yellow dog because they're saying if you are a Democrat, you should vote for all the Democratic candidates. So these liberal groups, the ones that tend to be more progressive, tend to be unions and organized labors, although in the 2016 election, they did not vote Democrats. They voted Republicans. They voted for Trump. So there's been like a shift in whether or not they thought the Democratic Party was courting them, paying attention to them, telling them what they would do for the unions and organized labors, and the Democratic Party felt really short on that. Okay, when it comes to racial and ethnic groups, I'm going to be talking about a little bit about two of them. Now, the NAACP, I think most people are familiar with the National American Association of Colored People, which is very influential in getting a lot of the civil rights legislation that was passed in 1964 to curtail, disrupt, to stop the discrimination of the African American population. Okay, there was a group that was operating in South Texas, and it was started right here in Corpus Christi, and it's called LULAC, or the League of United Latin American Citizens. Because what a lot of people don't know is that in South Texas, and I'm talking from San Antonio South, people of Mexican American heritage were treated the same way as the African Americans were in other parts of the country. So the LULAC united with the NAACP to push to get legislation to stop this type of discrimination, this type of racial discrimination. So these two groups tend to be more liberal in the way that they view things, and they tend to push the national ticket and the more liberal ticket. Okay, professionals tend to be more liberal, or oftentimes it is said the more educated that you are, the more progressive that you are. So this includes teachers and intellectuals. And intellectuals, they kind of define as anybody who's educated, and so that is like anybody that has at least 2 years of college is considered to be more educated and or an intellectual. So people that are more educated tend to be uh, uh, more liberal in the way that they think about things because they're not only looking at the country for themselves, they're looking at how different laws are affecting other people within other parts of the country or even their own backyard. You know, what's happening to society, you know, what's happening within civil society. So they just have to have more of a civic gene, if you want to call it that, or they develop one. Small farmers and ranchers tend to be more liberal in the way that they think about things if they're in the Democratic Party because they like the different types of programs, the farm programs and the Farm Bill and the different types of subsidies that come to them in case they cannot grow their crops or if they have problems with damaged crops or the crop yield isn't what it should be, that they're losing money, so they tend to support more programs, so they tend to be more liberals. Okay, so there's been some recent success in capturing party nominations, and with the 2020 election cycle, the Democratic Party has become more progressive in general, much more so than it had been in the past. Now, when it comes to the Republican Party, some of the demographics are this. People or in the past. Again, there's been a lot of shifts, but this is historically this is the way that it's been. Middle and upper classes in urban and suburban communities tend to align with it or affiliate with the Democratic Party. And so what happens is that a lot of times people that they're educated and they get good jobs, like the nouveau riche, and that just means the newly rich of Houston and Dallas, uh, do tend to be to affiliate with the Republican Party. Okay, I showed you a graphic that says that's not so true anymore. Suburban, like outside the city core, tends to be more Republican, but more urban within the city core itself, and however the city wants to define its core. But the more urban dwellers tend to be more of the Democratic Party. So that's kind of the way that it is. And so a lot of times people will shift from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party because they say, well, I got educated, I got a good job, I'm making good money, and I want to keep some of that money. So I'm going to affiliate with the Republican Party.